It's easy to divide the business world into the hard-nosed businessman and the entrepreneur, with the social do-gooder just sitting on the side being everyone's conscience. But now, new research by INSEAD Assistant Professor Filipe Santos suggests that there is a new entrant onto the field, and he's called the social entrepreneur. Welcome, Filipe.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
How do I tell a social entrepreneur from a social activist? What's the difference?
Well, I would say that you find lots of people in society that are unhappy about a particular element of society, and they usually try to organize themselves and lobby or create pressure for other people to behave better in their own views. And those I would call the social activists. So when you see consumer watchdog organizations, Greenpeace movements, when the way you operate is to apply political pressure, I would say you are a social activist. What I find is that social entrepreneurs are different. In the sense they don't try to force other people to behave differently or pressure them. What they see is that they see a problem that they feel compelled to resolve, and they find a creative solution for that problem. And then their effort is trying to validate that solution and show to the world that it can be done, and that other people should try to also come in and helping them develop a solution to this problem. For example, landmines. There are many, many landmines in developing countries, 70 million landmines. It would take 500 years to take all of them off in a traditional way. That's really a neglected societal problem. 15,000 people get injured or killed every year because of landmines. What can you do about it? So a social entrepreneur in Tanzania, actually two Dutch people that are now working in Tanzania, found a very creative solution. What they do is that instead of asking teams of very expensive foreign experts with metal detectors to come in and identify the landmines, they actually train mice to smell explosives. And by training this race of giant East African rats, they actually create a solution where the poor farmers in the local communities can, using these mice, identify and detect those mines at half the cost and twice as fast as a normal team would do. And that's the type of creative solution that social entrepreneurs identify. Areas where making a profit is impossible or seen as very difficult, they are not motivated by the profitability of what they are doing, but by the social impact of what they are doing. And that's what drives them.
But it still takes money to do this. So as you say in your working paper, kind of a combination, or you quote Richard Branson and Mother Theresa, I mean, it's somebody who sees a problem and knows how to solve it and can bring the resources to it.
And that's, I think, the cleverness about social entrepreneurs, as opposed to, you see a lot of businesses that are seeing the same problems and would like to address them, but they don't have this mentality of how do we solve large-scale problems with little resources. Because their mentality is, how do I deploy my capabilities, my resources? But a social entrepreneur, the commercial entrepreneurs even, that's what they are good at. They find a problem they care about, and they find creative, low-resource intensive solutions to address that problem. And that's what social entrepreneurs do very well. But they have a bit more difficult job because the problems they are facing are usually grand-scale problems, like poverty alleviation or malnutrition, education, landmines throughout the world. And they have no resources because they don't have the same market-based incentives and capital to draw from. So they have to be really creative. And I think that's where we can learn a lot by the work and the behaviors of social entrepreneurs.
So they create value. Because you talk about the corporate culture being one of either value creation or value approbation. Maybe you want to explain a little bit.
Yeah, so I think there's lots of discussion in this field about social responsibility, and there's ideas about the double bottom line, that companies should create economic value and social value. I think trying to separate value in different domains, I think, is wrong. What we have is organizations creating value for society. And sometimes their goal is to appropriate part of that value, get the upside for the owners of the corporation. And those I would call the commercial enterprises, the commercial entrepreneurs. But often their goal is not to appropriate value for themselves or for the owners of the organization, but actually they're very happy to see the value spill over to the whole society. And that's what I call social entrepreneurs. They are motivated by value creation, by the impact that they can have in society, and not by so much the value that they can get for themselves. And that's the difference that I would like to highlight in my work, is between value creation and value appropriation. And I think it's legitimate to have as a driving goal one or the other. And we need both, because they are both engines of economic development. But we should not just say value appropriation is the way to drive everything. We should also account for the important role of value creation mentality.
It seems as though if you create value, you're probably going to also be able to appropriate value, but the opposite doesn't necessarily work, because you just keep appropriating value, you're going to be running out of whatever it is you're appropriating.
Yeah.
You got to renew it.
So, and that's interesting because if you can appropriate value in a sustainable way, usually that means that you found a way of creating value also sustainably and putting your organization in a position called sustainable advantage. What we look for in business and strategy is how to identify a competitive advantage for our organization. And what I see is that in the case of social entrepreneurs and value creation goals, it's different. In the sense, in some situations, it's possible to create value, but very difficult to appropriate value. Think about, for example, vaccines for tropical diseases in emerging countries. A pharmaceutical company that creates a potential vaccine for a tropical disease will think this way: well, I have this potential vaccine, can I really sell it in a profitable way to a third world country? Probably not. So maybe I should invest my resources, my distribution channels, my scientists in trying to find solutions for diseases in developed countries. But in fact, you could at very low cost create a vaccine for a huge disease that affects millions of people. But that becomes a neglected problem in society. And social entrepreneurs, what they do is identify those neglected problems in society, where creating value is actually easy, but appropriating the value is difficult, and they target and try to address those problems.
Sometimes some points that you make in your piece too, the social entrepreneur is out in front of society. They may identify a need that society has not yet caught up with. Mm-hmm. The Unis-Cité is one of them, where a group in France had identified the need for minority teenagers, basically children, to have some kind of social association. And it didn't become a real issue. They couldn't get enough money to go until riots broke out. Yep. That was years. Yep. So what happened? I mean, is timing that important?
Timing is very important, because what I think social entrepreneurs do and their role in the economy is to anticipate some of the great problems that will become visible for everyone a bit later. They are in the forefront of seeing a problem and saying, this problem is important. And in that case of Unis-Cité, the problem was that youth in France were not really engaged with society, with voluntary work, especially youth from the suburbs of Paris and from suburbs of the big cities. And so these entrepreneurs identified this problem and saw we cannot have a society where the youth are disengaged, disenfranchised, and don't believe in the values of the society. But no one else realized the importance of this element of cohesion and engagement of the youth. So what they did was created a national movement for voluntary service, in which thousands of these young people would work together in teams doing voluntary work for social projects. And because their teams were cross teams of people with different backgrounds and different educations and different ethnicities, that created a lot of cohesion among the youth and a sense of engagement and empowerment of the youth. And so they started doing this. Initially, the government didn't pay a lot of attention to this project, but when the riots broke, they realized cohesion among the youth and engagement of the youth in society is very important, so let's fund this project. And then it became a national priority. But the social entrepreneur is the economic agent that identifies those priorities before they become visible for everyone, starts developing solutions to them, and alerts the other sides of society, business and government, to, hey, you should help here, this is important, let's solve this problem. That's their role. And I think it's an important role, and I think we'll see social entrepreneurship growing and becoming more important. And alongside commercial entrepreneurship, I think it's an engine for economic development and shared prosperity in our societies.
That's a great place to leave the interview. So thank you very much, Filipe Santos.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.